My name is Emily Thompson. I am 37 years old. My own family betrayed me by siding with my husband and trying to strip away everything I had helped build. The pain of their agreement hit harder than his demand for divorce ever could. It exploded in the lawyer's office here in Phoenix during what was supposed to be a simple estate meeting. My mother, Patricia, slid the papers toward me with a tight smile and said, "Sign it for the family's sake, Emily. Your father and sister agree Ryan should keep the house and business." Their silence as they nodded cut deep. I felt my stomach drop, but I quietly folded my hands and said, "I need time to think," then stood up without signing. That decision changed everything in ways they could never imagine. If you've ever been let down by the people who were supposed to protect, you tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. It really helps me know you're here with me through this. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back so you can understand how a woman everyone thought had simply given up actually carried a quiet strength no one saw coming. I met my husband when I was 19 in a client reception at the small real estate firm where I worked as a legal assistant. He was charming and full of big dreams about building something lasting in Phoenix, and I was practical, detail oriented, the kind of person who kept everything running smoothly behind the scenes. We married quickly. Our son Logan arrived a year later, and I stepped away from my paid position to help him full time with the books, the clients, the contractors, everything that turned his vision into a real business. For 15 years, I poured myself into that work while raising our son, managing our household, and somehow keeping us all afloat. My official title was wife, but my real role was the glue holding it all together. My mother always told me family came first, that a woman's place was supporting her husband and keeping the peace. My father never contradicted her. My older sister Jessica would nod along at every holiday gathering, reminding me how lucky I was to have such a successful man. I believed them. I trusted them. Until the day I found the first hidden transfer in the company accounts 3 years ago. That discovery changed everything quietly inside me. Late one night after Logan had gone to bed, I sat at our kitchen island in our suburban Phoenix home going through the monthly reconciliations. A series of withdrawals to accounts I didn't recognize caught my eye. I dug deeper, printing statements, cross referencing loans, following the paper trail until the picture became painfully clear. The house we lived in carried three mortgages totaling over $1.1 million dollars against an actual value of only $850,000. The business itself was buried under nearly half a million in lines of credit, back taxes, vendor debts, and equipment loans. The cars were leased with balloon payments looming. All told, we were hundreds of thousands underwater, and the money had vanished into cryptocurrency losses, gambling accounts, lifestyle expenses, and even an apartment I never knew existed. My first instinct was to confront my husband right then, but something stopped me. I knew how my family operated. If I spoke up, my mother would tell me to fix it quietly for the sake of appearances. My father would stay silent and expect me to handle it. My older sister would remind me that rocking the boat only hurt the children. So instead, I did what I had always done best I planned. I worked with my uncle Keith Morgan, a retired accountant I trusted completely, to move my separate retirement account and the inheritance from my grandmother into an irrevocable trust for Logan. The money was legally protected, untouchable by anyone, including me, in a way that kept it safe from any future claims. I documented every single debt, every suspicious transaction, and stored copies in a safe deposit box only I could access. I kept living the same life on the surface. I smiled at family dinners. I laughed at my mother in law's pointed comments about how some wives just didn't understand ambition. I even helped my cousin Hannah Brooks plan her daughter's birthday party, while inside, I carried the weight of knowing our entire world was built on borrowed sand. 3 years of waiting, 3 years of watching my husband grow more distant, more entitled, while my family praised him at every gathering and subtly criticized me for not being supportive enough. Then came the estate planning meeting my mother insisted we all attend because it's time to get our affairs in order as a family. That morning, in the bright conference room downtown, with the Arizona sun streaming through the blinds, my mother took charge the moment we sat down. She looked at the family lawyer, Thomas Klein, and said, We've decided it's best if Ryan receives the primary residence and the business interests. Emily has her own skills she can start fresh. My father simply nodded. My older sister Jessica added, "It's the fair thing, Em. You know how hard Ryan works." My husband stayed quiet, but the look he gave me said he had already won. My aunt, Karen Whitaker, who had driven in from Scottsdale, leaned forward and added with a sweet smile, "Honey, sometimes a woman has to step back for the family's greater good." Even my cousin Hannah sat there eyes wide watching it all unfold without saying a word. The pain was immediate and sharp, but I kept my voice steady. I asked for a private copy of the documents just to review them carefully. My mother sighed like I was being difficult. My husband rolled his eyes. In that moment, I felt the first real crack in my heart, not from him, but from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. They had already decided I was disposable. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for exactly this kind of moment for 3 long years. Later that afternoon, I met with my own lawyer, Amanda Torres, at her office across town. I placed 3 thick binders on her desk, every mortgage statement, every loan document, every hidden account I had tracked. She read in silence for nearly an hour. When she finally looked up, her expression had shifted from concern to something closer to respect. "You've known this whole time?" she asked quietly. I nodded. I was waiting for them to make their move. Now they think they're taking everything, but they're really taking the debt. Amanda leaned back and smiled, that slow, dangerous smile lawyers get when they see a perfect trap already set. Then we let them sign for it all. Every liability transfers with the assets. Your trust for Logan stays untouched. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in years, but the weight of what my family had done still pressed on me. That evening, my son Logan came home from soccer practice and asked why everyone was acting so strange at the meeting. I told him it was just grown up paperwork. He didn't look convinced. Later, my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Megan Holloway asking how the meeting went. I typed back a vague reply, but something in her tone felt off. She had been spending a lot of time with my mother lately, helping with family things, she said. I pushed the suspicion aside for the moment, but a small voice in my head whispered that the betrayal might run deeper than I realized. 2 weeks later, my Aunt Karen called me at work. Her voice was all sugar and concern. "Emily, dear, your mother is worried you're making this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers and let Ryan handle the business like he always has. The family is counting on you to do the right thing." I gripped the phone tighter. The right thing for who? Aunt Karen, she laughed lightly. "For everyone, of course. Don't be selfish." That call was the first real mini cliffhanger that told me the pressure was only beginning. I hung up and stared at my computer screen, wondering how many more family members were already lined up against me. Then came the dinner at my parents' house the following Sunday. My mother served her famous pot roast and casually announced that the family lawyer had prepared a revised version of the documents with even more generous terms for my husband. My father passed the potatoes in silence. My older sister Jessica raised her glass and said, "To new beginnings for everyone." My cousin Hannah sat across from me looking uncomfortable, but she didn't speak up. My Aunt Karen kept steering the conversation back to how strong women know when to step aside. I smiled politely, pushed my food around my plate, and inside, I felt the slow burn of realization that my family had turned me into the outsider without ever raising their voices. The next morning, my son Logan told me his grandmother had called him after dinner. She said, "Dad needs the house more because he's the provider." He said quietly, eyes on his cereal bowl. The words landed like stones. I hugged him and told him everything would be okay. But the crack in my heart widened. My family wasn't just taking assets, they were taking my son's trust in me one careful conversation at a time. That was when I knew the real battle wasn't about money or property. It was about whether I would let them rewrite who I was in my own son's eyes. That realization about whether I would let them rewrite who I was in my own son's eyes stayed with me long after Logan went to bed that night. The pressure from my family only grew stronger in the weeks that followed, turning what I thought was private paperwork into a full-blown campaign to isolate me completely. The very next afternoon, my mother called while I was still at my desk at the small accounting firm where I had started picking up freelance work. Her voice carried that familiar mix of concern and command. "Emily, your father and I talked it over last night. We really think you're being stubborn about these documents. Ryan has built that business with his own two hands, and the house is where Logan grew up. Signing them over to him is the least you can do after everything the family has invested in your marriage. I gripped the edge of my desk until my knuckles went white. Mom, I'm not refusing anything yet. I just want to understand what I'm agreeing to. She let out one of those long sighs she always used when I disappointed her. Understanding is a luxury, dear. Loyalty is what matters. Your sister already said she'd sign as a witness if it helps move things along. The jab landed perfectly, reminding me once again that my older sister stood firmly on their side, ready to rubber stamp whatever they decided was best for the family image. 2 days later, my Aunt Karen showed up at my apartment unannounced with a tray of her homemade lemon bars and that smile that never quite reached her eyes. She set the tray on my tiny kitchen counter and launched straight in. Your mother is worried sick, you know. She says you've been dragging your feet on the estate papers, and it's starting to look like you don't care about keeping the peace. Your cousin Hannah even mentioned how uncomfortable the last family dinner felt because of the tension you brought. I offered her coffee she didn't want and listened while she listed every reason why stepping aside would make me the bigger person. When I told her I needed more time to review the numbers with my own advisor, she patted my hand like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Time is the one thing your husband doesn't have, Emily. The family lawyer is already preparing the final versions, and we're all meeting next week to get this settled before things get ugly. She left the lemon bars behind like a parting gift, but the real message was clear sign or become the outsider no one invites anymore. That same evening, my older sister texted me a photo of her and our parents at dinner with my husband and Logan. The caption read, "Family looks better when everyone works together." I stared at the picture until the screen went dark. Logan had smiled in the photo, but I knew he had soccer practice that night and should have been with me. Later, when he came home, he avoided my eyes and mumbled something about how Grandma said Dad worked harder than anyone and deserved to keep what he built. My stomach twisted. My family wasn't just pressuring me, they were quietly rewriting the story for my own son, one casual comment at a time. I tried to find an ally in my best friend Megan. She had always been the one I could vent to, the person who brought wine and listened without judgment. When I called her that weekend, I poured out the latest round of calls and visits, expecting the usual support. Instead, her voice sounded careful, measured. Maybe your mom has a point, Em. Ryan has always been the provider, and with Logan getting older, sometimes it's easier to just let the man keep the assets so the kid doesn't suffer. The words felt rehearsed, like she had practiced them with someone else first. I asked her straight out if my mother had been talking to her. She laughed it off a little too quickly. She just wants what's best for everyone. Don't read too much into it. But the doubt planted itself deep. Megan had been my confidant for 15 years. Now even she seemed to be slipping into their orbit, feeding them little details about my hesitation. The following Sunday, my father finally spoke up at a family brunch my mother had insisted on hosting. He didn't raise his voice. He never did. He simply set down his coffee and looked at me across the table. Emily, your mother and I have always supported your choices, but this time, you're putting the whole family in a difficult spot. Ryan came to us last week and explained how much the business means to his future with Logan. We told him we'd stand behind him. My husband sat beside him, nodding gratefully, while my older sister murmured agreement. My Aunt Karen added, "See, even your father sees it. You're the only one making this complicated." I felt the walls closing in the slow squeeze of every relative choosing sides, without ever admitting they were choosing against me. My cousin Hannah sat quietly at the end of the table, eyes on her plate, but she didn't defend me either. The silence from the people I thought might still be neutral hurt worse than the direct jabs. I met with my lawyer Amanda again midweek to go over the latest revised documents my family's attorney had sent. She flipped through the pages and shook her head. They're pushing harder now. This version transfers the house, the business interests, and even the vehicles directly to your husband with no mention of the outstanding loans or liens. They think you're going to roll over because you always have. I told her about the growing pressure from my mother, my aunt, even my best friend. Amanda's eyes narrowed. That's classic isolation tactics. They're making sure you feel like the entire support system is against you, so you'll sign just to stop the noise. But remember, every signature they rush you into only strengthens the liability transfer we already prepared. She slid a fresh set of papers across the desk. We counter with our version tomorrow. You stay calm, keep pretending you're considering their offer, and let them keep digging their own hole deeper. The strategy worked on the surface. I answered my mother's daily calls with soft, tired agreement. I told my older sister I was thinking about what was best for Logan. I even let my Aunt Karen drop off more baked goods and listen while she praised my husband's vision. Inside, though, the weight of their coordinated campaign pressed harder every day. Logan started coming home later from his father's house, repeating phrases like, Dad says the family needs stability, and Grandma thinks you're being unfair. Each time he said it, I felt another thread of our bond fraying, and I wondered how much longer I could keep pretending without losing him completely. Then came the call that shifted everything. My Uncle Keith rang late one evening, his voice low and urgent. He had reviewed the newest documents my family's lawyers circulated to everyone except me. Emily, they added a clause that would require you to waive any future claims to the trust assets as well. Your mother pushed for it personally. They're not just taking the business, they're trying to make sure you walk away with nothing and no way back in. I thanked him for the warning, but the news landed like ice water. My own mother had gone behind my back to strip away the last safety net I had quietly built for my son. I hung up and sat in the dark living room for a long time, replaying every conversation, every sigh, every pointed comment. The family I had trusted for 37 years had decided I was expendable the moment it suited them. My husband had started it, but my mother, my father, my older sister, my aunt, even my cousin and best friend had all lined up to finish the job. They thought they were forcing me into a corner I could never escape. What they didn't realize was that every push only made my quiet plan more solid. The next morning, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother, but her tone had changed from sweet concern to something colder. Emily, the family meeting is set for Thursday. Everyone will be there to sign. Your father expects you to do the right thing and stop making this harder on Logan. She paused, then delivered the line that made my blood run cold. If you can't put the family first, we may have to explain to your son why his mother chose herself over him. I didn't answer right away. The threat hung between us like smoke. I finally said, I'll be there, Mom, and ended the call. But as I stared at the blank screen, another text came through from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of a message thread between my best friend Megan and my mother, timestamped from the night before. The words were unmistakable. She's still resisting. Keep the pressure on her about Logan. She'll crack soon. My hands started to shake. The betrayal I had only suspected was now right there in black and white, delivered anonymously by someone who clearly wanted me to know the truth before the final meeting. I set the phone down slowly, heart pounding with a mix of rage and something sharper clarity. The people I had spent my life supporting had turned every relationship into a weapon aimed straight at me, and the worst part was still coming. Thursday's family meeting would decide everything, and I had one last card left to play before they forced my hand completely. I set the phone down slowly that night, the anonymous screenshot still glowing on the screen like a scar I couldn't stop staring at. Thursday's family meeting loomed only 3 days away, and every minute felt heavier than the last. My mother had turned the entire family into a united front, and now even my closest friend was feeding her ammunition. I barely slept. But by the time I walked into the same downtown Phoenix lawyer's office on Thursday morning, I had the 3 thick binders tucked under my arm like armor I had been forging for 3 years. The conference room smelled of fresh coffee and tension. My mother Patricia sat at the head of the long table in her usual cream blouse, looking every bit the matriarch who had already decided the outcome. My father Robert Thompson sat beside her, quiet as always. My older sister Jessica was there with her perfect posture, my husband Ryan on her other side, looking smug in his pressed shirt. My Aunt Karen Whitaker had claimed the seat next to him, and my cousin Hannah Brooks hovered near the window, avoiding my eyes. Even my best friend Megan Holloway had shown up, claiming she was just here for support. Thomas Klein, the family lawyer, shuffled papers at the far end. The only empty chair was mine. My mother spoke, first voice smooth and final. Emily, we've all talked. The documents are ready. Sign them so Ryan can keep the house and business for Logan's stability. Your father and I expect you to do what's right for the family. She slid the stack toward me exactly like she had at that first meeting. My father nodded once. Jessica added softly, "It's not personal, Em. It's just practical." Ryan didn't even look at me. He just checked his watch like the whole thing was already over. I stayed standing. I placed my 3 binders on the table with a quiet thud that made everyone glance up. Before anyone signs anything, I said calmly, "You should see what you're actually agreeing to." I opened the first binder and began laying out page after page mortgage statements showing the house underwater by hundreds of thousands business loans, maxed out hidden accounts, the apartment Ryan had rented for someone else, the gambling losses, the crypto wipeouts. The numbers added up to nearly 2 million in liabilities attached to every asset they wanted me to hand over. The room went dead silent for 3 full seconds. Then my mother's face tightened. "Emily, this is ridiculous. If there were problems, you would have told us years ago instead of hiding them like some secret weapon." My father shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Jessica's eyes widened. "You knew all this and let us push Ryan to keep everything that's manipulative." Ryan's smug expression cracked. "She's making this up to scare us. She always exaggerates." Aunt Karen leaned forward, voice sharp. "Honey, if the business is in trouble, that's on both of you. But punishing the family now is just spiteful." My cousin Hannah finally spoke, voice small. "Aunt Patricia, maybe we should actually read the papers." My mother cut her off with one look. "Hannah, stay out of adult matters." Megan, my so called best friend, stared at the documents and then at me. You never said a word. I thought you were just being difficult." The betrayal in her voice almost made me laugh. She had been the one texting my mother behind my back, yet here she was acting shocked. I kept my voice even the way I had practiced in front of the mirror for weeks. I didn't say anything because I knew exactly how this family operates. You all decided I was the problem the moment Ryan wanted out. So I protected the only thing that actually matters, Logan's future. The trust I set up 3 years ago with my inheritance and my retirement account stays untouched. You can have the house, you can have the business, you can have every single debt that comes with them. I'm walking away clean, and I'm taking my son's security with me." Ryan stood so fast his chair scraped. "You hid this for 3 years. You let me think we were fine while you prepared to screw me." My mother rose beside him, cheeks flushed. "Emily Thompson, if you leave this room without signing the waiver on that trust, you are choosing yourself over this family. We will not tolerate that kind of selfishness. Logan needs stability, and if you can't provide it, we'll make sure he understands why." The threat landed exactly where she meant it to, straight in my heart. I looked at each of them one last time. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My sister was already shaking her head like I was the villain in her story. My Aunt Karen whispered something to Ryan. Hannah looked torn but stayed silent. Megan just stared at the floor. I picked up my purse, left the binders on the table, and said the words I had waited 3 years to say. "I love Logan more than any of you ever understood. That's why I'm done letting this family use him as leverage. From today forward, I will not be part of these meetings, these calls, or these decisions. If you want to explain to him why his mother disappeared from family life, go ahead. But the story he hears from me will be the truth." I walked out without waiting for their reaction. The Arizona heat hit me like a wall the moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, but for the first time in years, I felt something close to free. Behind me, I could hear raised voices through the open window, my mother demanding Thomas Klein fix this, Ryan shouting about fraud, Jessica trying to calm everyone. None of it touched me anymore. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected and lonelier than I had prepared for. Logan came home that evening confused and angry. "Grandma says you're trying to ruin Dad's life," he told me over cereal the next morning. I explained what I could without turning him against them, but the damage was already done. 2 weeks later, he asked to spend more nights at his father's new apartment. I said yes because I refused to fight for custody the way my family wanted me to. The visits grew shorter, the texts grew colder. My son was slipping away, and every time I tried to reach him, my mother's voice seemed to echo in the background. Megan stopped answering my calls after that Thursday. My Aunt Karen sent one final text saying the family needed space from negative energy. My cousin Hannah sent a single sad emoji and then went silent too. Even my father left a voicemail that simply said, "Your mother is very upset. We all are. I deleted it without replying. I had set the boundary exactly as I promised, and the family had responded by closing the door on their side. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment near my freelance accounting clients. The walls were plain beige, the furniture secondhand, but every night I painted one small corner a soft sage green because it reminded me of the life I was finally choosing for myself. I enrolled in evening interior design classes at the community college, something I had dreamed about at 19 before I gave everything to Ryan's vision. My first real client was a woman named Sandra, who had just left a 30-year marriage. When she asked how I started over, I told her the truth, one quiet decision at a time, even when it cost you everyone you thought loved you. Some evenings, Logan still came for dinner. We ate takeout on my tiny balcony and talked about school, never about the family. He was polite but distant, like he was protecting himself from choosing sides. I never pushed. I had promised myself I would never use him the way they had. My mother never called again. Neither did my sister. The silence stretched into months, then into a full year. I heard it through a mutual acquaintance that Ryan's business had started to crumble under the weight of the debts, but I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow kind of confirmation that the path I had walked away from was never mine to carry. The family newsletter my aunt used to send stopped including me entirely. Holidays came and went without invitations. I spent Thanksgiving alone with a small turkey in my grandmother's recipe box, the one thing I had kept from the old house. I still have the trust for Logan. It will pay for college and give him a real start whenever he's ready. That part of my plan worked perfectly. But the rest of me, the part that once believed family meant unconditional love, learned a different lesson. Setting boundaries didn't bring justice or reconciliation. It brought peace, yes, but also an emptiness no one warns you about. I protected my son's future and lost my place in his daily life. I protected my dignity and lost every person I once called home. Sometimes late at night, I sit on my balcony with a cup of tea and wonder if my mother ever thinks about the daughter she pushed out of the family circle. I wonder if my father regrets his silence. I wonder if Jessica ever misses the sister who used to help her with everything. Those questions keep me company, but they never get answered. And that's the price I paid for finally choosing myself. If you're watching this and wondering whether you should set the same kind of boundary with your own family, I can't tell you what to do. I can only say the loneliness is real, but so is the quiet freedom on the other side. What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. It still hurts to tell, but telling it reminds me I survived.